Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of Cavaliers Weekly here on the Bleacher Report app. I am Mikey McNuggets, aka Mike Lucas from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, and we have a lot to get to today regarding the Cleveland Cavaliers. Guys, first and foremost, I have changed my tune on the approach I believe Cleveland should have to this offseason. Even from last week when we chatted, not we guys. I am one of the guys. We're going to go over some possible trades that make sense for Cleveland. And we're going to take a look at what OKC has done in the Western Conference and see how that relates to Cleveland in the Eastern Conference. What lessons can they learn from a 1 seed that lost in round 2 the previous year to hopefully catapult them not just to the NBA Finals, but to an NBA championship and beyond. So that's what we're going to cover here over the next 15-ish minutes to get you prepared for another week of non-basketball content regarding the Cleveland Cavaliers. I've said this 3 weeks in a row now, and I'll say it for 3 more weeks until the NBA Finals are over. I genuinely cannot believe that we are sitting here at the end of May at 5 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers offseason plans for the last 77% of the season. And the first 80% of the playoffs, I was convinced the Cavs were going to make the NBA Finals. At a minimum, they'd be playing against Boston or New York or somebody in the Eastern Conference Finals. I did not see any world where Cleveland did not at least reach the Eastern Conference Finals, which would have been at a bare minimum 1 step forward from where they got knocked out of the playoffs last year against the Boston Celtics, the eventual NBA champions. But let's get to the important parts of today's show. How have I changed my tune? Why have I changed my tune? And frankly, what is that tune? So about 2 weeks ago, in the immediate aftermath of the Cavaliers' round 2 loss to the Indiana Pacers, I did some thinking. And I said, I understand that people in the immediate aftermath are going to call for change. Break up the core four, split up Darius and Donovan. Evan and Jarrett is not a winning combination in the front court. The Cavs need this. The Cavs need that. They're not tough enough. They're not deep enough. They're not experienced enough. Their head coach has never been here before. All that is valid. But I said at the same time, the Cavs won 64 regular season games. They put on a display of excellence in the regular season that very few teams have ever had before. And then they went ice cold in the playoffs. They dealt with some bad injury luck, and they lost to the Pacers, a team that was playing over their heads. And while I think all of that is still true, and particularly the regular season success, I'll say this stat again. Prior to this season, only 14 teams in the history of the NBA, 14 teams ever had won at least 64 games in the regular season and had an average margin of victory of 9 points or better. Oklahoma City and Cleveland both did it this year. So that's 16 teams ever. Before this year, 13 of the 14 teams that won 64 games and won by at least 9 points per game reached the NBA Finals. 12 won the championship. That level of success in the regular season should translate to postseason success. And for one reason or another, it hasn't with the Cavaliers. It didn't with the Cavaliers. It has with Oklahoma City. So to update that stat, there have now been 16 teams, 16 that have won 64 regular season games and had an average margin of victory of 9 points. 14 of those teams have have made the NBA Finals. And if OKC beats whoever the Eastern Conference representative is, that means 13 of the 14 teams that reach the finals will have won a championship. The 2 teams that did not reach the finals, the Spurs back in 2016, part of the reason they didn't reach the finals was the Warriors, who also fit this criteria, reached the finals. So you were automatically going to get one team that didn't because they play in the same conference. And then the Cavaliers this year, the first Eastern Conference team to ever have that level of regular season success and not reach the NBA Finals. Catastrophic failure on all accounts. Everyone's held responsible. No one is without blame for what happened to the Cavs. So I say all that to say I understood and I was okay with the sentiment of some people, which was we just should run it back. Play it safe. Make some changes around the margins. It is what it is. It's okay. We had some bad luck. Some guys that made shots all season started missing shots. There's injury things that were out of our control. Indiana was playing over their heads. I heard that. And then I did some more thinking. And I don't know if what I'm going to say is right. And we don't have any historical precedent to look back on to determine whether or not what I'm about to say is a precedent, a trend. But part of the reason we don't have any historical references is because this new era of the NBA, with all the aprons, the first apron, the second apron being the boogeymen, and the new CBA that the players and the owners agreed to that limits the team's ability to stay together, to pay everyone, to build super teams. The NBA wanted parity and they got parity. And right now, Cleveland has a core nucleus of Jarrett Allen, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Darius Garland that have been together 3 seasons. And in those 3 seasons, they've won 2 playoff series. They've lost 3 there. 2-3 in 5 playoff series with this nucleus together. And yes, it's a young team for the most part. Evan and Darius, incredibly young, especially 3 years ago when they played the Knicks in the playoffs. Donovan had been there before. Jarrett, a little more of a veteran. But for the most part, it was a younger team. And once again, I understand some of the credence to wanting to keep these guys together. However, as it stands right now, the Cavaliers have a bona fide top 10 player in the NBA and a guy in Evan Mobley who is an ascending star in this league, a legitimate ascending star, just 24 years old, made second team All-NBA, won DPOY, multiple-time All-Star or multiple-time All-NBA defensive team, an All-Star, all deserved. And he's a top 15 guy in basketball right now. And if you have 2 guys in their prime, either entering for Evan or currently in for Donovan, I think you have to be as aggressive as humanly possible to put the best team around them that you believe can win a championship. Now, we may argue what you think wins a championship versus what I think wins a championship, but I think you have to be as aggressive as humanly possible during this small window of contention that you have to maximize 2 top 15 players in the NBA. Because as we get deeper and deeper into this apron, into this second luxury, into the second apron, the luxury, this new CBA era, I think it's going to be harder and harder and harder for teams to pay 2 guys that much money and still fill out a roster that makes sense. And right now, the Cavaliers have a roster that it does make sense. They traded for DeAndre Hunter. Kobe Altman said, we're okay being a second apron team, but we have to enter the second apron whole. When they made the move for Hunter, they thought they were whole. But I think this playoff run against Indiana exposed some legitimate weaknesses in the foundation, in the core, in the makeup of what Cleveland believed was its franchise building blocks for years to come. I like Jarrett Allen. Personally, he's been incredible to me. We've had some really in-depth basketball conversations. He's upfront. He's honest, almost to a fault. And he's been so honest in the past that I can tell you with the utmost certainty that basketball isn't the most important thing to Jarrett Allen. And that's fine. It's not a knock on Jarrett. It's good to have a work-life balance. I wish I had the same work-life balance that Jarrett Allen had. But I'm also not getting paid $20 to $30 million over the next couple of years to help a team win a championship. And we saw against New York, the lights were too bright. We saw against Orlando, he had the injury, missed the whole second half of the series, missed the entire Boston series. It happens. Injuries happen. This year, he was up and down in the playoffs. In games 4 and 5 against Indiana, he played 50 minutes, had 11 points and 6 rebounds. That is unacceptable. And the time and the clock is ticking on this core franchise where Donovan's still an affordable player and where Evan Mobley is still ascending. And you have pieces that you can try and maneuver before other teams reach this level of a second apron team and they reach their quote unquote final form. I think when you look at the Cavaliers, I'm going to use a G. Bush Pokemon reference. They're not Charizard, but they're not Charmander. They're in that Charmeleon phase. And I hope I said that right. I could be so wrong on the Pokemon. I hope I said that right. They're in that middle phase. I don't think you can win a championship in that middle phase. You have to get to that final evolution to compete and win year in and year out for a championship. And as the core 4 is put together, with DeAndre Hunter being the 5th guy and some other guys on the bench that you may or may not be able to count on in the playoffs, that's not a final evolution of a champion team. It's not a starter team by any means. It's a good team. It's a team that had incredible regular season success and is a few made threes away from possibly playing for an NBA Finals. But we've seen time and time again that you just can't fully count on these guys. Maybe you do need to make some changes to bring guys into this locker room that can, A, hold Evan and some of the other younger guys accountable for their growth, for developing into an assassin on the court. Some guys have it in them, some guys don't. But you don't know, you'll never get that out if they're not surrounded by players and veterans that will make them show their true colors, that will do everything in their power to pull out the dog in Evan, to make him more assertive on both ends of the court, to turn him into a vocal leader, not just on the court, but in the locker room. Because if the Cavs are going to reach that final form, it's because Evan has developed from a top 2 second-team All-NBA guy to in the conversation to win MVP. You know, I did this thing on UCSS today. I'll do it for you again right here. Let me pull up the headlines. But I went back and looked after the Thunder loss last year to the Dallas Mavericks in the second round of the playoffs. OKC was the 1 seed. I found some headlines that if you take out the name on the headline, you would think they may be talking about the Cavs. You ready? Blank is a star, but can he be the best player on a title team? It could be Donovan Mitchell, right? Well, that was an article written about SGA last year from Yahoo. Are the blank tough enough inside to rebound and defend against the league's top contenders? That was NBA.com. Not talking about Cleveland, talking about Oklahoma City. The real headline, are the Thunder tough enough inside to rebound and defend against the league's top contenders? Blank has proven it in the regular season, but can he really be a number 2 on a team that wins it all? That could be Evan Mobley. That could be Darius Garland. Instead, that was a Sports Illustrated article about Jalen Williams. And last but not least, after another upset loss in round 2, is it time to have some serious conversations about the blank's core? We're having those serious conversations about the Cavs now. That article by The Ringer was written about the Oklahoma City Thunder. So there are some parallels between where Cleveland is now and where Oklahoma City was last year. It's not exactly apples to apples, but it's also not papaya to potato. It's a lot closer. We're talking apples and bananas, green grapes versus oranges, something along those lines. Now, OKC didn't blow it up. They didn't make any major drastic changes. They signed Isaiah Hartenstein, big signing, game changer for them. Another big to pair along with Chet Holmgren. They also traded Josh Giddey, who was part of their core, who was the first lottery pick. They paired up alongside SGA to help elevate them to that next level. And they traded him to the Chicago Bulls for Alex Caruso, who brought on a veteran presence, a defensive-minded leader, one of the leaders in the locker room, who was just a better cultural fit. So what is that Cavs version of Giddey for Caruso? We'll get to that in a sec. The other reason OKC was able to take that jump was SGA took his game to another level. It was great last year. He was elite this year. He was the MVP this year. There were questions. Is there another level to SGA's game after the 24 season? We got the answer. The answer was yes, there was. He became a better playmaker. He became a more efficient scorer. He became a more locked-in defender than he had been in the past. And part of the reason that OKC took that jump was their best player took an equal jump. So for everyone saying, well, can you really expect Evan Mobley to develop even more? Yes, absolutely. 1,000%. And it's not just can you expect, it's a we need. It's a Cleveland desperately needs because the Cavs can't reach that pinnacle if their best players between 8 and 10 in the NBA. Guys, I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm being realistic. You need a player like an SJ's in the top 5, 6. I think Donovan's peaked at 8. There's nothing wrong with that. Being the 8th player in the world is incredible. But is it good enough to win a championship? His track record says no. 8 playoff appearances, 0 times he reached the conference finals as the team's lead dog. It's not an opinion, that's a fact. Can Evan Mobley do it as the lead dog? I hope to find out next year. All right, so now, as we established, I'm open to having all these discussions. I think Jarrett Allen's the easiest guy to trade. I'm also open to hearing discussions about Darius Garland. Those are the 2 key pieces the Cavs have that I think are realistically movable. And it's not just me saying that. It's Chris Fedor, who covers the Cavs for Cleveland.com. This was from his Wine and Gold Report podcast. Chris Fedor said, and I quote, I think the 2 untouchables are Donovan and Evan. I've been getting the sense that the Cavs would be more than willing to entertain and at least consider possibilities for Jarrett Allen and Darius Garland than they have in the past. Yes, that is the right answer. A, you should always be listening and entertaining offers. That's just the job of the GM. But also, despite statistical evidence showing that the core 4 works together in the regular season, we don't have that same evidence that proves this after 3 playoff runs that it is nearly as effective in the postseason. And who cares if you win 64 games in the regular season if you only win 5 games in the playoffs? The Cavs have mastered the regular season. They have to figure out the playoff equation. And does the core 4 work in the playoffs? Maybe. It might down the road. But do you have the time and the patience to allow it to reach whatever its last level is? And does it have a last level? I don't know the answer to either of those questions. My gut says no, it doesn't. And my gut says they've had enough time. So if that's how you feel, which is how I feel, there has to be some changes made. Once again, I think Jarrett Allen is a significantly easier piece to trade than it is to trade Darius Garland. If you trade Jarrett Allen, you're not creating a giant hole that needs to be filled. Evan can slide to the center position. You have DeAndre Hunter who can play the 3 and the 4. You have a guy in Dean Wade who can play the 3 and the 4. You can bring in a league veteran minimum at the big position to take some of those 5 minutes, so it's not all on Evan to be the center. It's a lot easier to find a vet minimum center who can fill a 15, 20-minute role and rebound, play some defense, be a rim runner, than it is to find a dynamic playmaking point guard / shooter, off-ball guard, whatever you want to call the position Darius plays. He plays point, but he's really a combo guard. It's a lot easier to find a big man to play that on a vet minimum than it is to find a dynamic guard to help fill that hole. If you trade Darius Garland, where's a lot of the offensive creation coming from? Yes, Evan needs to be more aggressive, more assertive. I want to see that usage rate go up. But Darius had a usage rate in the low 20s. It was 23.5, I believe was the exact number. I'll get that for you in 1 second. But if you take that out, how are you divvying up that 20? Donovan goes up a tick or 2. Evan goes up 3 or 4, but you still got about 17% usage rate to fill. And the Cavs' issue in the playoffs against Indiana wasn't necessarily its defense. It was we don't have guys that can generate good looks. We don't have guys that can make shots. When Darius is healthy, in theory, that's what he's supposed to do. So if you get rid of a Darius, you need to bring back somebody who can fill that usage rate, that offensive creation, not just for himself, but for others, role that Darius currently occupies. I know it's the regular season. I know it's kind of irrelevant because we know how the season ended, but the Cavs did have the second best offensive efficiency in the history of the NBA this year. Boston first last year. The Cavaliers this year, the second best ever. A big reason for that was Darius was incredible the first half of the season. Incredible. Legitimately, all NBA contention level, incredible. Second half of the season, not nearly as good. Injuries, shooting slumps, a million different reasons why, but he wasn't as good. Is it because his body wore down? Is it because teams got a better read on what he wanted to do? Is it they figure out something in the Cavs? Did the Cavs take their foot off the pedal? Did he get hurt? All options I'm willing to listen to. But if you're going to trade Darius, you need to get somebody back that can replace what Darius does. And there was a trade floating around today involving the Minnesota Timberwolves. Something along the lines of Darius for Jaden McDaniels and Dante DiVincenzo, or Darius for McDaniels in the 17th overall pick. And on the one hand, yeah, I would love to add Jaden McDaniels to this team. He'd be an awesome fit alongside DeAndre Hunter and Evan Mobley. He can play the big wing. He's a 4. He's a 3. If you want to go supersized, he can play a little bit of the 2. But he's not a shot creator. He's a 3-and-D wing. He's a stand in the corner, shoot threes. He is not a guy that creates offense for himself. Does it mean I wouldn't do the trade? I don't know if I love that one as much as some other deals that I've seen floated out there, but a simple swap, Jaden for Darius on paper, solves one issue, makes you more versatile and better defensively, but leaves you with a giant hole on offense and how you're going to create shots and how you're going to operate this offense that Kenny Atkinson wants to run. Kenny brought this offense in because of the core 4. Right? Like this is what Kenny was brought here to do. Unlock Evan Mobley and find an offense that maximizes the talents of some of the guys we have. Kenny wants constant ball movement. He wants guys getting into the paint, attacking rotations, forcing the defense into mismatches. And part of the reason you can do that is you have 2 guys in Darius and Donovan who can get into the paint at will. Jaden McDaniels ain't doing that. There was the whole Darius for Jalen Suggs and De Silva deal floated out there. One of the things we knocked Darius Garland for is availability. He's been significantly more durable than Jalen Suggs the last 4 years. He's played in 50 more games than Jalen Suggs has, and he's missed less playoff games in his career despite playing more playoff games than Jalen Suggs has. So once again, you're fixing one issue. You're a little better defensively in the backcourt. You add a little size. But if we're going to knock Darius for not being available in the playoffs, which I think is a very fair criticism, then you want to get a guy who's even less durable. So whatever the deals are, next week I'm going to go through the trade machine. I will present to you guys 10 trades next week that I think make sense, that are reasonable, that are viable for both sides. I don't like throwing fake trades out there that I haven't put too much thought into, that don't fit with the cap, because why would we discuss a trade that doesn't actually work? So next Thursday on this very app, we will go through some fake trades that I think would benefit Cleveland and the other team that they're in negotiations with. But for right now, just keep this in mind. You can trade Jarrett without creating a giant hole in your team. If you trade Darius, you need some very specific and certain skill sets back to make this team operate the way it has. The Cavs may be a defensive juggernaut. If they got Jaden McDaniels for Darius Garland, yeah, you may not be able to score 110 on them in a playoff game. Can they score 95? Maybe if Donovan has another 50-point game, but like, look at the Cavs offense in game 2. Seriously, like go back to that Cavs offense in game 2. I know they ended up scoring 120 points, but that was all Donovan, and no one else could create a shot, especially late. And I don't want to fall back in that situation where through the course of the regular season, they are putting such a load on Donovan to carry the offense that he's not ready to do it in the playoffs. So it's a tricky balance, but I do believe that Cleveland is best suited moving forward by shaking things up. It doesn't have to be a giant erupt, eject, throw everything out the window and start from scratch, but it could be turning Jarrett Allen into 2 wings or turning Jarrett into 1 wing and give yourself some cap relief so you can be a little more aggressive, not only in the free agent market, but if another team is looking for a team in a 3-team deal to dump off a player, a la how you got Jarrett Allen in the first place, you can be more involved in those conversations as well. Last but not least, what can they learn from OKC? Trust in what you built. If you believe it, but don't be so stubborn that you're not willing to make a deal for the betterment of its own good. Sam Presti drafted Josh Giddey in the lottery. Sam Presti talked glowingly about Josh Giddey, but after seeing how Josh Giddey performed in the playoffs, where Dallas simply would not guard him, they said, we need to get someone better who fits us better, who we can count on in a playoff series. That's kind of exactly how I feel about Jarrett Allen, and I'm fascinated to see what kind of deals Kobe Altman will at least entertain for their all-star center this summer. That's going to wrap it up for this week's Cavaliers Weekly. If you like what you heard, give me a follow. You can find me on X at Mike Lucas TV. It's right there on your screen. I'm also on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. You can find us on YouTube by searching there. That's going to wrap it up for this week's Cavaliers Weekly. We'll see you next week with some fake trays to keep you occupied through the summer. As always, go Cavs. Peace.